Hey y'all, I am doing another Stocktober video. I'm going to show you what I did all this week to stock up with all the craziness going on, the high prices at the grocery store, this weather. I am trying desperately to get everything put up for the winter, and that means I'm going to dehydrate, freeze, and can as much as I can, and I'm going to share with you what I did this week. We're going on vacation at the beach, so I have got a lot to do to get done. So I'm going to show you what I did this week. I hope you will follow along and enjoy the video. I picked up these tomatoes at a local stand. They were only $20 for both baskets, so I knew I needed to pick those up because tomato season is almost gone. So by the time we get back from the beach, they will probably won't be available. So I'm going to go ahead and process these. I'm going to do them as whole tomatoes, so that way I can just use them any kind of way that I can use them as sauce, stews, chilies, whatever I wanted. And I just washed them really well and put them in the sink. Wash them really well, and then I cut an X in the bottom. That's going to make it a little bit easier to peel. Put them in boiling water just until the skin starts to separate from the tomato, and then we're going to cool them off in some cold water with some ice, and they'll peel really easily, especially if you pull it back from the side. It just peels right off. And I am going to core them and give that part to the chickens, and then I'll take the peels and I will dry them in the dehydrator, and that way nothing will go to waste. So I will put those in the dehydrator and turn them into a powder. So I'm going to go ahead and get all the tomatoes processed, and then I will cut them up, and I will cut them into either halves or fourths. I'm going to cut these into fourths, and I'm going to do this part the day before, and I'm going to put them in the fridge, and that way I don't have to do it all at one time, but you can if you want. So they will be a little bit cold, so I'm going to get them hot by putting them in my pot and cutting them up, and then I'll cover them with some water. I'm using some store-bought water. I don't use it straight from the tap. So I'm just going to cover my tomatoes with water, and I'll let that come to a boil, and I will have all the recipes down below of how to can everything, but I will have a dedicated video for each thing that I'm processing. So I can the whole tomatoes. You'll just put some salt and some lemon juice in there, and I always put the tomatoes in first and then put the boiling water over the top. I think you just get more coverage that way, and there's less floating in the jar. You're going to get a little bit of floating in the jar. You really can't help that, but it helps a little bit better. And I'm going to do a 1/2 inch headspace, wipe off the rim of the jar, put my lid and my ring on, and I'll process these for 45 minutes for quarts. So I've got a lot of tomatoes, so I'm going to do a double stack. I've got the tall Presto, so I can do that. That way I only have to do it in one batch instead of two. So now I've got all these tomatoes on my shelf, and they were a little bit sticky, so I washed all of them in some warm soapy water. And now I'm going to take the peels and put them in my dehydrator. You want to make sure that you do one single layer and make sure that they don't overlap, because they won't get dried enough, and you want to make sure they're really dry before you put them in your jar, or it will kind of mildew in there. So just make sure that you've got them really dry and crispy, and I'm going to put them in my big tall mason jar, and when we get back from the beach I will go ahead and make those into a powder. So I took the extra that I had left over and put them in some cubes. I also had some tomato juice left over, and I'm going to put that in the freezer. So now I'm going to process my potatoes. I've got some yellow ones and some red ones, and I'm going to put those in jars, and I'm also going to use some of those for some soup that's coming up next. So I will have the recipe link down below, like I said, and I'll have a dedicated video for each one. So I just put the salt in there and covered them with boiling water and process those, and there's going to be great to have on the shelf. And here is my soup. This is one of my favorite soups, and you can just use it as a base and make it vegetable soup, or you can put some ground beef or some beef stew in there, and it is so good. And I think I had to do a double a double batch because I put them in the quarts because we use a lot of this soup. So I went ahead and got that done. And now I'm going to work on the beets. They had huge beets in here, so I kind of had to separate them out. I got the larger ones out, and the smaller ones I'm going to can. I put them in my big roaster and just covered them with water and let them cook for about an hour until they were tender. I took my syrup that I'm going to pour over them. So I'm going to peel my beets. I've let them cool for a little bit, and then I cut up some onion. And I love that with the onion because after you eat all the beets out, you have the pickled onions. And also you could put some boiled eggs in there and make some eggs with that. So I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, I always like to put my beets in there and the onions first and then ladle the liquid over the top. I think you get better coverage that way. And like I said again, I'll have a dedicated video for these beets. So I've got those ready, and those are just out of the water bath canner, and these are going to be so good. These are one of our favorite things to have. And I did pick up some collard greens at that US Chef store, so I cleaned those up really good, put some pork in there and some broth and cooked those up, and now I'm going to freeze those, and I'll take that with the pot liquor and freeze it, and then in a couple days I can pop that out and put it in the food saver or put it in a food saver bag, and it'll keep for at least a couple years. And the last thing I'm going to do is my pancake and waffle mix. I'm doing just a half a batch, and it fits perfectly in my mason jar. So all you do is mix up baking powder and some powdered sugar, and like I said, I'll have the recipe link down below in the description box. And I'm just going to put it in my mason jar, and then I will show you how to use it because we made pancakes for the grandkids. So you'll just take an egg, you'll put in some milk and some vanilla. I'm using my homemade vanilla that I made the other day, and mix that up, and it makes the perfect pancakes. So I hope you enjoyed this week of Stocktober, and I will have some more videos coming up in the next week, and I hope y'all have a great day.